In the library, someone passed me a note that said, "Get out now, he has a gun." I was sitting at my usual spot on the third floor of the university library, cramming for my accounting final when a girl with blonde hair quickly dropped a folded piece of paper on my desk and kept walking without making eye contact. I unfolded it and read the message twice, my heart immediately racing. I looked around trying to spot her, but she disappeared between the stacks. The study area was packed with students preparing for finals week, everyone hunched over textbooks and laptops with that familiar end-of-semester desperation. I grabbed my phone to call 911, but there was no signal. The third floor always had terrible reception because of the thick concrete walls, but I'd never needed to make an emergency call from here before. I quickly packed my stuff and headed for the main stairwell, but found it blocked off with orange cones and a maintenance sign. That was weird because the stairs had been fine when I came up 2 hours ago. I tried the elevator, but it was out of order too, with a handwritten sign taped to the buttons that looked hastily made. The only other exit was the emergency stairwell on the far side of the building. I started walking through the maze of bookshelves, trying to get to the other exit while scanning for anything suspicious. That's when I noticed how unnaturally quiet it had become. The usual sounds of pages turning and keyboards clicking had stopped almost completely. Students were still sitting at their desks, but something felt off about their posture. They were sitting too rigid, too still, like they were trying not to draw attention to themselves. Several had their phones out, but they were just staring at blank screens with no signal bars. I walked past a table where 4 students were sitting, and none of them looked up at me, which was unusual because people always glance when someone walks by their table. Their eyes stayed fixed on their books, but I could tell they weren't actually reading. As I got closer to the emergency exit, I saw a library security guard standing near it. He was an older guy with gray hair that I'd seen before, usually pretty friendly when checking student IDs. But today something was different about his demeanor. When our eyes met, he smiled, but it felt forced. "Everything okay?" he asked, stepping slightly to block my path to the exit. "Yeah, just heading out," I said, trying to sound casual. "Need some fresh air." "Might want to stay put for now," he said, his voice taking on an edge. "We're having some technical difficulties with the building systems. Safer to wait it out up here until maintenance fixes everything." That explanation made no sense. Technical issues wouldn't require keeping people trapped on one floor. I nodded and pretended to head back to my seat, but instead ducked into the nearest bathroom to think and try my phone again. Still no signal, which couldn't be a coincidence anymore. Someone was deliberately jamming cell service, which meant this situation was planned. I stayed in the bathroom for several minutes, trying to figure out what was really happening. When I came out, I noticed the security guard had moved to cover the main stairwell entrance. Now there were 2 guards total, both positioned to watch the exits. Students were still sitting quietly at their tables, but I could see tension in their shoulders. A few were whispering to each other, keeping their voices so low I couldn't make out any words. Then I spotted the blonde girl who'd given me the note. She was sitting 3 tables away, and when she saw me looking, she mouthed something silently. I moved closer, pretending to browse the shelves, and she mouthed it again more clearly. "Not him." She glanced toward the security guards, then back at me, and shook her head slightly while pointing at something behind me. I turned around and saw what she was indicating. There was a third person I hadn't noticed before, someone in regular clothes moving between the stacks with purpose. He wasn't a student, and he wasn't library staff, but he was carrying something under his jacket. That's when I realized the guards weren't the threat. They were trying to contain a completely different danger, and I'd been looking at this whole situation backwards.